now want to focus a little bit more on styling our form. I've gone through and created a label for each input box. You can see here. That way you can click on them and it'll select them a little bit nicer. I can click on, would you be a good fit, and it selects my text area. And again, just looks a little bit nicer. But we want to add some style into these. Now right now the form's ugly, but we're going to do some layout and some CSS, to it, which will make it look quite a bit nicer. So first off, let's change all of our labels, which really are these words in front of the box. And let's also change our boxes themselves. So that's going to be inputs. That's going to be select. Option. Now, if I'm not mistaken, select an option you can't change very easily, but we can change text area. And I'm going to change all of those, and let's do a font size 1.1 rem, something like that. That sounds good. And those that we can, let's add some padding, 5 pixels, and let's look at that. So you can see now they're a little bit larger, and our input boxes have a little bit of padding on them. This is larger, but it doesn't allow us to easily change the background color. I quickly went and looked up. You can do things where you do change them, but and it is again very simple select list, but there's additional HTML and CSS that you got to put in, and some JavaScript that we've got to do in order to check them. So select boxes are very difficult to customize, and they're not as easy for sure. Okay, so from here we've got some simple things laid out. Let's do some more. Let's do something for label, and let's make it so anytime we have a label, let's float that label to the left hand side, and let's clear anything to its left. So if a label comes up to the side of something that's already been floated, then it's just going to drop underneath. And so what that should do is it should look at this email here, float it to the left. Anything that comes after it will come to its right, which this box will come to the right. And then the next item, which is a label, will look to my left-hand side and say, am I clear of any labels, or am I clear of any floats? And it's not. And so it should just automatically drop down like so. So let's do that. And we've got some problems here. Let's keep working through those. So we're going to float left, clear left. One thing we do need to change, because label is an inline element, that's what's causing our problems. We need to change our display to be a block type. So let's do a display block, and that's going to definitely help us out a bunch. So let's look at that now. Okay, still not. All right, let's keep going here. I want to add a width to these, and let's start out with 100 pixels. No, let's go to 200 pixels. See what that looks like. Okay, now we're starting to get somewhere. That's good. Let's go 300 pixels and see what that looks like. Okay, just trying to get on some lines there. All right, and now next what I want to do is I want to add some padding to those. So let's do some padding. Let's do some padding right. Oops. The right hand side, and we'll do something like 10 pixels. I'm also going to put a margin top on the top of these 10 pixels, just kind of give it some spacing, and let's align each of these to the right hand side, okay, like so. And so we'll look at that. All right, so they're aligned right. You should be able to click on them and fill them out, and that looks a little bit nicer. All right, so next thing I want to do is I want to change my inputs to also be block. So I want to do them, display them as a block element. Let's do input and select in there. Okay, so now you can kind of see we've got the email lined up, but this one not so much. I probably want to add my margin dash top that I added before, 10 pixels. I might have some problems though with this one. It kind of does. It doesn't really line up super great, but we could do something specific for that block if we wanted to, and add some specific text there. So we could do just a a greater amount of margin up above. Maybe, let's see what 15 looks like there. I don't know. So I'm just trying to get that to line up better with the words underneath. All right, well, we'll just keep playing with this here. I also want to do a text area. So I could probably do a text area in there. Look at that, and that's lined up a little bit better, and each one of these are a little bit better. Let's go back to 10 and look at that again. Yeah, that alignment's just a little bit off there, and I don't really like that. But let's go 20 pixels. Oh, that's, oh, sorry, my text area. I did the wrong one. Select 20 pixels. A little bit better, and this text area probably needs to do. I'll take that out. Again, so I hope you're seeing how you can kind of manipulate this a little bit. It is a little tricky though, right? Now there are better ways of doing this, much better ways. The way I'm doing this here, I can't say I really like. And probably the better approach to this would be using grid. Now that we have grid underneath our belt, we probably should be using it. So I'm going to delete that, and we're going to apply this to the form itself. And so we'll just grab our form here, like so. And now we're going to display our form as a grid. Now if we go back and look at this, our form is the parent, and we have a label and an input and a label and select and a label and a text area and an input. And I should probably get rid of that. And that parent-child relationship works perfectly for what we're trying to do here. So I'm going to say form, and now we want to display that as a grid. Okay, so we're going to draw out a grid here, and I want my grid template rows just to be auto. I want them to be as big as the items that are within them. But we can get a little bit more picky with our columns. And so with our columns, you know, maybe we want to say something like this is going to be 300 pixels for the first column for these over here, right? And then the second column, we can just say 1 fraction. We just want it to fill out really big. And then from there, maybe we want to add a gap. So I'm going to do a little grid gap. And let's just do a grid gap of 1 rem or something. That's probably fine, the width of a character. And we can give a width if we want to. Let's look at what our width of, I don't know, I'm going to go 100%. We'll see what that looks like there. And maybe we'll add, well, I think that'll be good. I don't need to add any padding. Okay. So the last thing, well, let's look at that and see what that looks like here. Okay. So refresh that. Now you can see that this form is definitely filled out. A couple things we should probably have done on this is the input, and no, not the input. All of our labels should probably use a text align right. That way they kind of line up a little bit better. But can't you see how much easier that is to do? That send button, maybe we want it to fill both columns or something like that. Maybe we want to move it over, so we could do something like identifying that button so it has, it does not have an ID, so we need to say ID equals submit, so we can get at it in our CSS, and we can do a submit, and then just go through and just do a grid column, and we can say that we want that to go from 2 to 3, you know, something simple like that. Now that's probably going to be really big. Yeah, it is. Maybe we want to set the width to be something like 10 rem, and let's look at that and see what that looks like. Okay, so I think that's a pretty simple, nice looking little form. I don't know how that, well, it doesn't look that big, huge, and when I shrink it down, because it's grid, it resizes appropriately. Now one problem we're running up into there is these boxes only get so small because I've got words that fill out this far, and so it's changing the width of this and all of these, so it probably would have been better to not do 300 pixels, maybe do 200 pixels, or maybe even do like a min-max would have been really nice too. But you can see you kind of have to be aware of that as far as responsive goes. But I think that works fine. It kind of bumps down to 2 lines. I don't know how I feel about this. Or we could do some media queries or something to resize that. But grid makes laying out a form immensely better, and I would recommend using that for all of your form controls.